Golden Age Hollywood dazzled the world with glamour, stars, and cinematic innovation. But behind the polished frames were films that shattered norms, enraged censors, and ignited cultural firestorms. These weren't just movies, they were battles between art and authority. Today, we unveil the 12 most controversial films from classic Hollywood that sparked outrage, censorship, and lasting legacy. 1. The Birth of a Nation, 1915. Few films in cinematic history are as polarizing or as pivotal as The Birth of a Nation. Directed by D.W. Griffith, this silent epic was heralded for revolutionizing the film medium, but reviled for its deeply racist ideology. At over 3 hours long, it introduced groundbreaking techniques like cross-cutting, panoramic long shots, and realistic battle sequences. Technically, it laid the foundation for modern filmmaking. Socially, it became a flashpoint for national outrage. The film's portrayal of Black Americans as dangerous and uncivilized, paired with the glorification of the Ku Klux Klan as noble saviors, sparked immediate backlash from civil rights groups. The NAACP protested its release, labeling it dangerous propaganda, and fought to have it banned in cities across the country. Chicago attempted to restrict it, while other cities enforced content edits. Even President Woodrow Wilson was swept into the controversy. A private White House screening reportedly ended with Wilson allegedly praising the film as like writing history with lightning. Though widely disputed by historians, the quote fanned the flames of national outrage. Still, audiences flocked to see it. The Birth of a Nation became the highest-grossing film of its time, earning an estimated $10 million. Its impact was chilling. The film coincided with a resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan in the 1920s, with some chapters using it as a recruitment tool. Griffith, under fire, later released Intolerance in an attempt to redeem himself, but the damage was done. To this day, The Birth of a Nation is studied as both a cinematic milestone and a haunting example of film's power to perpetuate hate. Its legacy is complex, a triumph of technique, a tragedy of message. 2. Freaks, 1932. In 1932, MGM released a film so disturbing, so ahead of its time, that it shattered the career of its director and was banned in multiple countries. That film was Freaks, Todd Browning's tale of sideshow performers who band together against those who mock and exploit them. It was raw, it was unfiltered, and it horrified early audiences. What made Freaks so shocking wasn't just its story, but its casting. Browning rejected makeup and prosthetics, instead choosing real circus performers with physical differences. Audiences weren't prepared. Reports from early screenings described people fleeing the theater in disgust, and, in one case, a woman allegedly suffered a miscarriage. While that may be apocryphal, the film's impact was undeniable. MGM panicked. Roughly 30 minutes were cut from the final release, including scenes now considered lost forever. Even with the edits, Freaks was a disaster at the box office. Critics were merciless, branding it repulsive and exploitative. In the United Kingdom, the film was banned outright for over 3 decades. And in the United States, it was condemned as morally grotesque. The fallout was severe for Browning. Though he had previously directed the iconic Dracula, Freaks effectively ended his mainstream Hollywood career. He directed only a few more minor films, none of which restored his stature. But time has a way of reshaping reputations. By the 1960s, Freaks began its ascent to cult status. Filmmakers and scholars reappraised its themes, not as grotesque voyeurism, but as a bold commentary on exploitation, otherness, and human cruelty. Today, it's seen as a defiant work of art, a film that dared to look unflinchingly at society's treatment of those it deems different. Once condemned, now celebrated, Freaks is a chilling reminder that the most controversial stories are often the ones that need telling the most. 3. Baby Doll, 1956. In 1956, Baby Doll didn't just provoke criticism, it launched a full-scale cultural war. Directed by Elia Kazan and written by Tennessee Williams, the film was based on two of Williams's one-act plays and told the story of a childlike bride caught in a steamy power struggle between her aging husband and his rival. It was sultry, unsettling, and, for 1950s America, scandalous. Before the film even hit theaters, controversy was brewing. Warner Brothers stirred the pot with a provocative ad campaign. Carol Baker, dressed in a nightgown, reclining in a baby crib, sucking her thumb. It was suggestive, calculated, and deemed exploitative by many. The image alone was enough to send moral guardians into a frenzy. The National Legion of Decency gave Baby Doll a C rating, morally objectionable in its entirety. Catholic groups across the country demanded boycotts, and some cities, including Memphis and Atlanta, banned it outright. Overseas, Sweden briefly prohibited the film, citing its provocative themes. But was Baby Doll explicit by today's standards? Hardly. It relied more on implication and subtext than overt acts. What enraged audiences wasn't what they saw, it was what they imagined. The film hinted at pedophilic desire, sexual coercion, and psychological manipulation, all cloaked in Southern Gothic tension. Critics were divided. Some hailed its psychological complexity and Kazan's direction. Others dismissed it as trashy provocation. But despite the backlash, Baby Doll earned 4 Academy Award nominations, including Best Adapted Screenplay for Tennessee Williams and Best Actress for Carol Baker. Over time, the film has been reevaluated as a masterclass in restraint and atmosphere. It wasn't explicit, but it knew exactly how to push buttons. Baby Doll forced Hollywood and its audiences to confront taboos they preferred to leave untouched, forever altering the conversation around moral censorship in cinema. 4. Peeping Tom, 1960. Before Psycho terrorized audiences, another film dared to step into even darker psychological territory, and paid a heavy price. That film was Peeping Tom, released in 1960 and directed by British auteur Michael Powell. Its premise was horrifying. A shy cameraman with a traumatic past films the faces of women as he murders them, capturing their final moments on film. Critics didn't just pan Peeping Tom, they buried it. British newspapers called it evil, perverted, and vile. Some declared that Powell's career was finished. Within days, the film was pulled from theaters across the UK. Powell, once celebrated for classics like The Red Shoes and Black Narcissus, became a cinematic pariah. The controversy stemmed from more than just the violence. Peeping Tom forced audiences to confront their own voyeurism. Powell held up a mirror to the act of watching, implicating the viewer as complicit in the killer's obsession. It was brilliant, but it was also too unsettling for the time. In the U.S., the film saw only limited distribution, with many theaters refusing to screen it altogether. The outrage was so fierce that Powell struggled to find work for years. His next film, The Queen's Guards, failed to recover his reputation. But like so many controversial works, Peeping Tom found redemption decades later. In the 1970s and 80s, directors like Martin Scorsese and Francis Ford Coppola championed it as a misunderstood masterpiece. Today, it's studied in film schools and praised for its bold, self-reflexive storytelling. Critics now regard it as a pioneering psychological thriller, one that was simply too ahead of its time. What once destroyed a career has become a cornerstone of modern horror cinema. Peeping Tom reminds us that sometimes the most disturbing stories are the ones we carry inside, and the lens through which we watch can be more dangerous than the images themselves. 5. The Moon is Blue, 1953. By 1953, Hollywood's production code, better known as the Hays Code, had ruled with an iron fist for nearly 2 decades, dictating what could and could not be said or shown on screen. Then came The Moon is Blue, a romantic comedy that challenged the system, not with visuals, but with vocabulary. Directed by Otto Preminger, the film was based on a popular stage play and featured wholesome romantic antics. But its use of then-taboo words like virgin, seduction, and pregnant sent shockwaves through Hollywood. The Production Code Administration flatly refused to approve it. Studios were warned, release this without approval, and you risk financial ruin. But Preminger and United Artists called the bluff, and released it anyway. The backlash was immediate. Cities like Boston, Kansas City, and Memphis banned the film outright. Conservative critics called it immoral. Religious groups organized boycotts. Yet, The Moon is Blue contained no nudity, no sex, no violence, only frank conversations that reflected how people actually spoke in private. Audiences, curious about the controversy, made it a box office smash. The very uproar that was meant to destroy it helped fuel its success. The film earned over $3.5 million, a massive sum for a romantic comedy of the era, and was nominated for 3 Academy Awards. But the film's true legacy was its role in undermining the Hays Code itself. By releasing The Moon is Blue without the PCA seal and proving it could still be profitable, Preminger cracked the moral armor that had long constrained Hollywood. That crack would widen in the years to come, ultimately leading to the creation of the MPAA rating system in 1968. The Moon is Blue didn't need scandalous scenes. It weaponized words, and in doing so, it helped bring an end to the strictest era of censorship in film history. 6. Blackboard Jungle, 1955. Few films lit a cultural fire quite like Blackboard Jungle. Released in 1955, this gritty drama thrust audiences into a chaotic, racially charged inner-city classroom and sparked a media panic over juvenile delinquency, rock and roll, and teenage rebellion. Directed by Richard Brooks and based on Evan Hunter's novel, the film starred Glenn Ford as a war veteran turned high school teacher trying to tame a classroom of unruly students. Among them was a young Sidney Poitier in a breakout role, portraying a smart but troubled teen named Gregory Miller. His presence alone was groundbreaking in a Hollywood that often marginalized black actors or reduced them to stereotypes. But what really stirred the hornet's nest was the music. Blackboard Jungle was one of the first films to feature a rock and roll soundtrack, opening with Bill Haley and his Comets' explosive Rock Around the Clock. The moment the music blared in theaters, chaos erupted. Reports poured in of teenagers dancing in the aisles, shouting, and even rioting. In some cities in the US and UK, screenings were cancelled or censored after incidents of vandalism and fights. The British Board of Film Censors initially refused to approve the film, and several American cities followed suit. Australia slapped on a restrictive rating, and limited screenings due to fears it would corrupt young minds. Critics warned it glorified youth violence and racial mixing, a dangerous message in the 1950s cultural climate. Despite the uproar, or because of it, Blackboard Jungle became a box office hit and a cultural milestone. Its frank portrayal of race, class, and teen angst struck a nerve. It didn't offer easy answers. It simply reflected a reality many preferred to ignore. Today, Blackboard Jungle is remembered not only for launching rock and roll into the mainstream, but for daring to speak a hard truth: that American youth were changing, and they wouldn't be silenced. 7. The Outlaw, 1943/1946. If there's one film that tested the limits of Hollywood's censors while mastering the art of scandalous promotion, it's The Outlaw. Produced and directed by the eccentric billionaire Howard Hughes, the film pushed the boundaries of the production code long before it was fashionable to do so. And all it took was a bra and a bust line. The controversy centered around Jane Russell, then a newcomer with undeniable screen presence and a figure that left censors in disarray. Hughes designed a custom underwire bra to emphasize her curves, though Russell later claimed she never wore it. Nonetheless, the camera lingered on her body in ways that infuriated the Production Code Administration. Though The Outlaw was completed in 1941, its release was delayed for years as Hughes battled censors. He refused to cut the film's most suggestive scenes, leading to a standoff that lasted until a limited release in 1943. After more pushback, the film was pulled, re-edited, and finally re-released in 1946 to much greater fanfare. By that time, curiosity had reached a fever pitch. Hughes masterfully leaned into the scandal, using provocative billboards and posters that emphasized Russell's sexuality. Audiences poured into theaters. What the censors had tried to bury, the public embraced with gusto. Still, the backlash from moral groups was fierce. The Catholic Legion of Decency condemned the film, and multiple cities attempted to edit it. Yet all the outrage only fueled ticket sales. The Outlaw grossed over $5 million, a staggering sum at the time. While the film itself was a mediocre Western at best, its place in history is cemented by the cultural war it ignited. Hughes proved that controversy could be currency, and The Outlaw became a case study in how to provoke, offend, and ultimately triumph over Hollywood's censors. 8. Lolita, 1962. Even before the cameras rolled, Lolita was a powder keg. Based on Vladimir Nabokov's notorious novel, it told the story of a middle-aged man's obsession with a teenage girl, a premise that had already gotten the book banned in multiple countries. Bringing it to the screen in 1962 was nothing short of cinematic defiance. Director Stanley Kubrick, known for pushing limits, took on the challenge with calculated precision. He cast James Mason as Humbert Humbert and Sue Lyon, just 14 when filming began, as the titular Nymphette. To appease the censors and the production code, Kubrick toned down the explicit content of the novel, relying instead on implication and innuendo. Yet the subject matter remained deeply unsettling. Despite the toned-down script, the backlash was fierce. Religious groups protested. Some theaters refused to screen it. Critics asked whether a story like Lolita should even be told. The age difference between Mason and Lyon, and the fact that she was still a minor when the film premiered, only intensified the outrage. Still, Lolita pushed forward. Its marketing leaned into the controversy, with posters asking, "How did they ever make a movie of Lolita?" That audacious question became the film's calling card, and a brilliant piece of self-aware advertising. Audiences, both repulsed and intrigued, came in droves. The film received mixed reviews upon release. Some praised its craftsmanship and Kubrick's restraint. Others condemned it as exploitative, even dangerous. Yet Lolita earned an Academy Award nomination for its adapted screenplay. And Sue Lyon won a Golden Globe for Most Promising Newcomer. In hindsight, Lolita remains one of the most controversial films of the Golden Age. Not just for what it portrayed, but for the ethical dilemmas it forced viewers to confront. Kubrick's adaptation walked a tightrope between art and provocation, and while it never fully escaped the shadow of its scandal, it undoubtedly changed the boundaries of what could be shown or suggested on screen. Ninth Island of Lost Souls, 1932. Released during the pre-code era, Island of Lost Souls was unlike anything audiences had seen before, and for many, it was too much. Based on H.G. Wells's novel, The Island of Dr. Moreau, the 1932 adaptation was a nightmarish tale of science gone mad, featuring grotesque human-animal hybrids and disturbing questions about evolution, morality, and cruelty. Directed by Earl C. Kenton and starring Charles Laughton as the unhinged Dr. Moreau, the film was steeped in an atmosphere of dread. Laughton's portrayal of the sadistic scientist was deeply unsettling, and Bela Lugosi, fresh off his fame from Dracula, added to the horror with his haunting performance as the tormented sayer of the law, chanting the now iconic question, "Are we not men?" The grotesque visuals and dark philosophical undertones rattled viewers. Scenes of vivisection, psychological manipulation, and suffering caused a moral panic. In the United States, several states censored or banned the film. Kansas refused to screen it at all, and in the United Kingdom, it was outright banned for 25 years, not released there until 1958, and only then with heavy edits and an X certificate. Critics of the time were torn. Some admired its ambition and atmospheric brilliance. Others called it perverse and inhuman. The British Board of Film Censors condemned it as against nature. Religious groups decried it as godless. The controversy took its toll, and Island of Lost Souls fell into obscurity for decades. But the film didn't stay buried. Over time, scholars and horror fans reevaluated its significance. It became clear that Island of Lost Souls was more than just shock value. It was a bold critique of unchecked scientific power and ethical decay. Its themes would later echo in countless science fiction and horror films, influencing everything from The Fly to The Silence of the Lambs. What once horrified censors is now hailed as a horror classic, a film that dared to ask dangerous questions and refused to offer easy answers. 10. The Blue Angel, 1930. The Blue Angel is not just a landmark of early sound cinema, it's also one of the most controversial films to emerge from Weimar-era Germany. Directed by Josef von Sternberg and starring Marlene Dietrich in her breakout role, the film captured the devastating descent of a conservative professor into humiliation and madness, undone by his obsession with a cabaret singer. At the center of the firestorm was Dietrich herself, sultry, defiant, and unapologetically sensual. Her portrayal of Lola Lola, a nightclub performer who seduces and destroys her suitor, defied the norms of acceptable female behavior on screen. In the United States, UK, and parts of Europe, censors demanded edits or heavily restricted screenings. In Nazi Germany, The Blue Angel was eventually banned altogether, though the precise reasons remain debated. Some sources cite indecency. Others suggest political retaliation due to Dietrich's growing support for the Allied cause. The film's central theme, a man's public unraveling due to repressed desire and social hypocrisy, struck a nerve. Critics and audiences alike were stunned by its raw honesty and bleak portrayal of obsession. The infamous scene where Dietrich sings Falling in Love Again, while dressed in a top hat and stockings, became iconic and deeply controversial. Dietrich's performance was magnetic, but also revolutionary. She blurred gender lines, weaponized seduction, and reshaped the femme fatale archetype for decades to come. To many conservative viewers, she was dangerous, a symbol of unchecked female power. But to modern eyes, She was a cinematic trailblazer. Despite the bans, The Blue Angel was a box office success and launched Dietrich into international stardom. Its dual-language production, shot simultaneously in German and English, also marked a turning point in global filmmaking. Today, The Blue Angel is studied not only for its artistic excellence, but for the storm it stirred. It was a mirror held up to a repressed society, and what it reflected was more than many were prepared to see. 11. The Night of the Hunter, 1955. With its stark black-and-white cinematography, expressionistic shadows, and haunting religious overtones, The Night of the Hunter was unlike any American film of its time. Released in 1955 and directed by actor Charles Laughton in his first and only directorial effort, the film fused horror, fairy tale, and Southern Gothic into a nightmarish story of greed and deception. Robert Mitchum delivered one of his most chilling performances as Reverend Harry Powell, a self-proclaimed preacher with love and hate tattooed across his knuckles. Powell marries a naive widow in order to find her hidden fortune, then terrorizes her children in his relentless quest for the money. His hymn-tinged menace and spiritual hypocrisy made for unforgettable cinema, but also caused deep discomfort. Critics didn't know what to make of it. Many labeled it too strange, too theatrical, too dark. Audiences expecting a typical thriller were blindsided by its surreal tone and disturbing themes, especially its portrayal of religion as both weapon and disguise. Reviews were mixed to negative, and the film bombed at the box office. Laughton, crushed by the reception, never directed again. But The Night of the Hunter was simply ahead of its time. Its bold visuals, dreamlike structure, and commentary on religious manipulation would later be praised by critics and filmmakers alike. Directors from David Lynch to Guillermo del Toro have cited it as a key influence. Today, The Night of the Hunter is considered a masterpiece, a film that challenged conventions and dared to show that true evil can wear the mask of piety. Its failure was a loss to Laughton's directing career, but its long-term impact reshaped genre filmmaking for generations to come. 12. A Streetcar Named Desire, 1951. When A Streetcar Named Desire arrived in theaters in 1951, it felt like a seismic jolt to the Hollywood system. Adapted from Tennessee Williams' already controversial stage play, the film brought intense psychological drama, sexual violence, and emotional unraveling to the big screen. Elements rarely seen in post-war American cinema. Vivien Leigh starred as the fragile and delusional Blanche Dubois, while Marlon Brando, in a performance that would define modern acting, portrayed the brutish Stanley Kowalski. The chemistry was electric. The tension was volcanic. But the content pushed well beyond what the production code considered acceptable. The original play included open references to homosexuality, rape, and mental illness, all themes that censors demanded be toned down or removed entirely. Director Elia Kazan had to soften the material, but even in its edited form, the film retained its raw emotional power. Critics and audiences were stunned. Some theaters refused to screen it without further cuts. The Catholic Legion of Decency gave it a C rating and urged boycotts, denouncing it as morally offensive. Despite this, Streetcar was a commercial and critical success. It earned 12 Academy Award nominations and won 4, including Best Actress for Vivien Leigh. Yet the shadow of controversy lingered. Some speculated that Leigh's real-life mental health struggles were worsened by her emotionally grueling role, though definitive evidence remains elusive. More importantly, A Streetcar Named Desire marked a turning point in American cinema. It proved that films could tackle adult themes with sophistication and sensitivity. It blurred the line between stage and screen, art and censorship, repression and expression. Today, the film is hailed as a landmark in both performance and storytelling. A moment when Hollywood dared to pull back the curtain and expose the emotional chaos beneath the surface. These weren't just films. They were cultural earthquakes. Each challenged censorship, redefined storytelling, and forced society to confront uncomfortable truths. If you found this journey through cinematic controversy enlightening, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more untold stories from Hollywood's past. The reel never stops rolling.